Start the live stream now. I will now call to order the study session meeting of September 21st, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically and council members are participating remotely, pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on the Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel online, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Councilmember Downing?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Goff?
Here.
Councilmember Duran Malika?
Here.
Councilmember Escobar?
Here.
Right, thank you. So this is our 2021 budget work session. We have quite a few items. I'm going to hand it over to City Manager Geyer. Welcome, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you, Mayor Leidy, members of council. This is our first budget discussion for the proposed budget 2021. A little bit of a few different things this year compared to past years. As you recall, we did not engage in a strategic planning session earlier this year for a couple of reasons. Number one, council put together a very robust and dynamic strategic plan in 2019, which is a 5-year plan, 2019 through 2023. And I'll touch on that at the end of the PowerPoint presentation that we have for you tonight specific to budget and the progress to date with that plan. Overall, I want to share a few things with you before we dive in to the items on the agenda. As I've been sharing with you, budget is tight for next year. However, budget is in a better position for next year based on projections than what we anticipated in late spring, early June, early summer. So that's a positive thing. I've stressed this a few times. The city's in a much different financial position, not immune to external economic forces, but a much different financial position than other communities, given the fiscal conservative nature of past city councils, as well as the city council. So that has helped well position us to where we're at today. This year, I'm presenting the budget intentionally at a higher level for this first conversation for a couple different reasons. I'm asking for feedback on option A and B that I've included in the budget this year. We're also seeking feedback and direction on the implementation of a body camera and dash camera system. This is an unfunded state mandate by SB 217. Implementation requirement isn't until 2023, but based on the recommendations of Barry Dunn and the work we've done internally at a staff level, we're recommending we bring implementation forward in 2021. Because that really gives us 2 years to really get the system up and running. And I think the system will be of value to the city. We need to figure out how to pay for it, though. So we're going to have a discussion about that tonight. And certainly we have a strategy that you saw in your materials over the weekend. The second piece is direction on the police department 7-year staffing plan. So when I became city manager back in 2018, Chief and I worked closely to put together a 5-year staffing plan. There had been staffing plans in the past and changes made. That work was done internally, in-house, and thanks to the work of Barry Dunn, we have an external third-party guide that really helped inform where our staffing levels should be. Now, I'm not asking you this evening to commit to a 7-year staffing plan. The focus of tonight's discussion is to walk you through the staffing plan and why it is what it is, to get your buy-in for what we're proposing for 2021 budget, and then to know that every year moving forward, we're going to reevaluate the roadmap that we've laid out with this plan and bring recommendations forward. So again, I can't emphasize enough, I'm not asking you to provide me with direction to approve a 7-year staffing plan. I'm asking for guidance on the 2021 budget position and then command staff restructuring. That's the more immediate piece from an operational perspective that I need feedback on tonight, if there's any concerns or questions about that. Otherwise, I need to set that in motion following this meeting. So in summary, what I need from council this evening is feedback on these different items. What questions do you need answered? And then do you need a second budget session on October 5th? I've tentatively held some time on that October 5th study session evening to do any necessary follow-up. Right now, we have budget scheduled for public hearing on October 12th, with adoption of the budget tentatively scheduled by council on October 26th. Those dates are certainly subject to change. If council, you were to say, Heather, we need more time for this reason, and we can shift those dates into November. I don't really want to go, though, I will tell you this, too far into late November, early December, because we want to have the budget adopted by mid-December. So that's an overview. We're going to start with body camera and dash cams to get us going. And we have Chief May and Commander Heidi Waltz with us this evening. So Mayor, if you'll go ahead and pull up that presentation, we'll go ahead and dive in.
There you go.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening. I appreciate you guys allowing me to bring forward the body worn and dash camera implementation plan. Mayor, you can go to the next slide. With the Senate Bill 2217 passage, it's required for all law enforcement officers to have body worn cameras by July 1st, 2023. So we're asking to implement that program a little early for 2021 to provide additional accountability and transparency to our city. All officers are required to wear body-worn cameras when engaging in law enforcement activities, even myself. Some exceptions include undercover police officers where there's risk to them. And then also, when we're dealing with children or victims of violent crime, we have to make sure that those cameras are not recording. Next slide, please. So the body-worn camera technology. So one of the things too is we did a lot of research and went all the way back into May when we really started looking into the groups and what's going on throughout the county. So we really wanted to make sure that we had a comprehensive, all-inclusive system, body-worn and in-car cameras. And the purpose for this is to make sure that we capture multiple angles of the situation by utilizing it. And I'll talk about some of the technology also is that there are triggers and things that occur where cameras will turn on, if you activate your overheads or you pull your taser from your holster. So there's a lot of things where it takes away human error, which is very important in high stress situations. So so it doesn't always rely on the officer to activate their camera system. They still can, but however, if they're faced with a dangerous situation, if they draw their weapon or their taser, it automatically activates the camera. It also activates the cameras of officers, near that individual. Next slide, please. Currently, these are the agencies that have that use the Axon camera body cam system in 17 Judicial, Broomfield, Commerce City, Thornton, Westminster. When we were going, and that's really important because of all of us having the same equipment that assists the district attorney's office. So when we're downloading digital recordings. They have a system now that accepts the Axon video. So that, that right there, they were the groundbreakers for us. So it'll be a little easier for us to implement this program here. We also worked with Broomfield and Thornton, and they've done extensive research to go to the Axon system. So we used some of their data and information when we made the decision to also pursue Axon. They are the leaders in this technology, and I think, again, I think that just adds to, helps us on the liability. We want to make sure that, with especially with the Senate bill, that we're capturing all that digital information. Next slide, please. So Axon, their system's called the 7+ bundle. So again, that includes a body-worn camera, the taser and taser holster. They have, for each holster, it can be, each sidearm will have a sensor in the holster that activates when that weapon is pulled. Also the software, again, I'll talk about that in a little bit, about having a digital technician, the software that helps provide some of the redaction and auto tagging of facial features and other things that we can redact stuff quickly. Axon Citizen, so what that is the capability of people with camera phones, so we can download their video to this system as well and keep all of that video evidence intact. Again, the big thing and the big cost of this system is the unlimited secure cloud storage of all video. They say that one officer will generate 1 terabyte of video a year, and that's a lot. So for us to store that in-house, Bob's the IT guy, he could probably tell you how many servers, but I bet you it would be a lot to maintain that. So that's why we will do a cloud system, and they will maintain that video, and it's all secure. And this package right here, that does fulfill all the requirements for this Senate bill. Next slide, please. Now, the dash camera system is our Axon Fleet 3 package. It's an in-car camera system. It has an interior, so it faces out the windshield, and you've seen probably some of those footages on TV shows and everything else. But it also has a camera that faces back into the rear seat of the window where we hold prisoners. So that's very important too for their safety. I think it's very important to have that in place so we can see what's going on with them. And, again, it's just that full thing of, making sure that we're transparent, making sure there's no false claims against the officers. So that's a very important thing. Also, when things activate, if they activate their lights in the cars, that will also trigger the body camera. However, when you're sitting behind a steering wheel, a lot of time that's blocked. So that's not going to capture that. So that's why it's real important to have that dash camera. When the officer exits the vehicle, that camera still has a whole scene view of that whole area. So we get, again, another view, not, sometimes the camera being in front, you might not see something off to the side where that camera in the car could possibly pick those things up. So this is a whole integrated system, and it's all connected to each other to make sure that we capture as much information as we can for certain situations. This one's not mandated by the Senate bill, but I think adding that will increase the transparency, provide broader perspectives of incidents, and reduce liability on the part of the police department in the city. Next slide, please. So we get to the big part, and the cost. So there's a couple options. Option one is a 5-year enhanced warranty. There's no discount with this one. It's a one-time purchase. The one-time purchase price is little over $1.6 million. You can do a yearly payment plan, which is about $320,000 over that 5-year period. Option two, that's the one we're recommending. 10-year enhanced warranty. One-time purchase price is $3,072,346. I'm not recommending that. we are recommending the yearly payment plan of $307,234.60. Again, this is a yearly payment plan, and that's what it'll start in 2021. Next slide, please. And what that does is, with that, it spreads the payments out over 10 years. So what this plan also does for us, it has a replacement schedule too for the body-worn cameras. It's a 30-month, 60-month, a 90-month that they'll come in and replace all the cameras, and 120-month. So what that means, after 10 year, on our 10th year, they will replace all our cameras, and then they'll also give us a 1-year warranty on those new cameras at year 10. So really we get an extra, probably a couple of years is probably, what they're probably hoping for is that we negotiate another contract for replacement. The tasers, they also have a replacement schedule for us too, which is really nice. They do, replace the tasers at 60 and 120 months. And the same thing goes there too. So at the end of this, it's not really a lease purchase, because at the end of it, we do own the equipment. But I think what they're hoping for at the end, that we would also continue, using their camera systems. However, there's a hand up.
Becky, I'm thinking let's let Chief get through his piece, and then we'll collect all the questions.
I just wanted to look at that other screen again. That was
Sure.
it, but I can wait.
Okay.
So, so that's all the costs. So that the warranties, the replacement, that's all included in that 10-year cost of $307,000 a year. And again, it's spread over, that purchase is spread over 10 years. Additional equipment will need to be purchased as part of, if we hire new officers or expand our FTEs, or if we expand our vehicle fleet. Some of the equipment costs will be involved in that. That would be an additional cost. Next slide, please. So with implementing the body cam system, the Senate bill also, they have some strict guidelines when it's in regards to the reporting, redacting, and also they have time limits on releasing the video to the public. So that's another reason we'd like to start early, because in 2023, we don't get any chances to test the system. So this gives us an opportunity to test that system. So due to the amount of work necessary, the current staff, we can't absorb this work currently. So we're going to need a 1 FTE digital technician position. And what the thought was that get them on board early 2021. So when we start developing the processes and the implementation, they're right there in the ground level, so they can assist us doing that. So making sure that we're doing everything right. And the thing on their training too, we have good relationships with Commerce City and Thornton, where they can go down, and the district attorney's office, where they go down and see how their systems are set up, understand. So we have an easier setup time than what some of those jurisdictions where they had to make it up as they went. So we'll probably have a pretty good way with having this person on board early to implement that quickly. Again, in 2023, we want to make sure, so you'll see actually in the next presentation that we asked for another digital technician in 2023, actually when this really goes live and when we have to hit those timelines. But again, that's if we have to. Some of the technology in this Axon system is pretty amazing. We'll see if we can do it with one. But, again, in that staffing plan that you'll see later, it gives us the ability, hopefully, if we need to add another person. Next slide. So this breaks down that option 2. So the annual cost, it breaks it out even more. So the Axon body camera system 7+ package You see that cost right there, $218,000. The IT identified that possible or approximate cost for bandwidth is about $3,000 extra a year. To outfit all the vehicle SIM cards, that's an additional $11,520. The one FTE digital technician is $75,500. For the in-car cameras, this includes, with installation with our current fleet, is $88,500, and then the total cost is $397,254.60. And again, this is included in our proposed 2021 budget for the city. And like the city manager stated, this is an unfunded mandate by the state. So we're asking for council's commitment to fund the body-worn and in-car camera system for $307,234 for 2021.
Is that the end? Oh, yep, we are at questions. All right, Councilmember Brown, you get to go first. Do you want me to go back to that slide?
Oh, wait, would you please?
That one?
Yeah, that one right there. So I just did a real quick math total on that last screen, and I'm coming up with what I felt would be the two things that I should add together, right? That would come up with the 307, 234.60, because I broke it out to 10 years. And I'm coming up with 316. So could you please tell me which are included in your, I believe it was your last page? Meredith, can you?
Oh, I didn't know what you wanted to see.
Can
The
you
very
go to
last one
keep
again?
going?
This one?
So when I come to this one, what I did was I added the 7+ package, and then I felt like the only other expense that would be ours would be that $88,500, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
And if I add those two numbers together, if I'm not mistaken, it's 316, 110, 306. I'm sorry. I need to go back to school with my, where does the rest of it come from, Chief? Is all this built into their price?
So the 3,000, the internet bandwidth, I think we got that internal SIM cards. Yeah, and this is what they gave me on the contract on what I have before me on the pricing.
So Chief, to help you out just a little bit, this is City Manager Geyer. Councilmember Brown, if you, at this annual cost slide, if you look at the Axon Officer Safety Package, the 218 plus the 88,500, that gets you to that 307,000. It should get you to that 307 number. And then the 3,000, the 11,520, and the position are outside of the actual software equipment costs.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had one other question, Mayor. I want to make sure that I understood you right, because I don't know anything about body cams. Are they only activated when they go to a weapon, a taser, or a gun? Or are they activated from the minute they walk out their car to talk to somebody?
So there's an activation button. So when they go and contact someone, so in an emergency, say they have to draw their weapon, that's when they don't have to worry about turning it.
Okay.
The procedure for the officers, when they get out of their car, if they're contacting someone in the park, if they're doing a routine patrol, they hit the button on that contact.
Okay.
With that conversation. And
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was sharing my screen and I did not see all the hands. So I have 4. So I'm just going to go by ward. So Councilmember Downing, and then we'll go to Ward 3.
Thank you. Chief, I was just wondering, understanding that this is an unfunded mandate, is there any availabilities of grants to help out purchasing some of this?
At this time, we didn't see any grants available. As we get closer to the date, there could be some monies available, but at this time, and plus we're trying to move quickly on it. So.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, I just need a little bit of a clarification. So I understood about how the police officer can press a button to turn it on, and there's certain situations that'll trigger to turn it on. But do they also have the capability of turning it off, or, you know, like if they're going to go on their lunch break, or, you know, how do you decide, or is there something in place for when they can turn it off and when they can turn it on, or turn it off, I guess?
For privacy issues and everything, when they go to the restroom, when they're not contacting somebody, they can turn, like inside the police department. And the cool thing with Axon is that where their on button is, to turn it off is in a totally different position. So they're going to get used there. So they can't mistakenly, you know, turn off the camera in a high stress situation. So again, you try to build in muscle memory when it comes to turning on every time they get out of the call. And then some of our policy, we'll have clear policy, you know, when they can and can't, or when they can or can't turn it off.
Right. And I've got a couple more questions. I just want to clarify, because I don't have it right in front of me, but the Senate bill that we're talking about, that also had, I don't know, guidelines about turning it off. And also, I think, if I'm remembering right, some consequences for turning it off inappropriately. Is that right?
I think that, yeah, again, and that will be covered in our policy. But one of the things, too, that it states in there that it will, if it's not on, right? So if the camera is not on or not working during a situation, then, you know, it looks bad, too. So the officer can be held accountable. That's why I think the Axon system is so great, is because if there's other officers in the area, if the camera goes on, all the cameras activate. The car camera, dash cam will activate. So, you know, again, you know, the more cameras that pop on, the better chance we have of capturing that. So we don't, because we were, you know, again, things happen, things get broke. But, you know, the more stuff we have in place to make sure that we have, like I said, other cameras turning on will be okay.
Okay, great. And then one last question I had is, I understand this replacement plan, but do you know anything about, like, when they come around to the first one to replace it, are they going to replace it with whatever's the most current model, or is it just going to be the same old thing you got the first time, or do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. You know, it'd be terrible to go back to the iPhone 2. So again, I think with technology and everything else that we move forward, and they will, again, this company's always, I mean, some of the stuff they have today just blows my mind. And I can't wait to bring stuff in that maybe I can, you know, we can do some demonstrations so you guys can see it. But again, they said, you know, the equipment they will replace it with. And over a 10-year period, that's huge.
Yeah, it only gets more expensive, I think. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Councilmember Malika?
So actually, a couple of my questions already got asked and answered, but I think my final one is for Heather. Didn't our last strategic planning conversation include moving towards body cams anyway? Didn't we talk about that prior to the passage of Senate Bill 217?
It did, yes. So we really hadn't done the groundwork that Chief May talked about. That was done earlier, back in the spring, earlier this year. So, you know, several agencies around us and certainly across the country have gone to body-worn cameras. We haven't taken that step. So we're on that path, and we think that this plan is the most appropriate plan for us, like Chief said, to make sure we get up and running sooner and really work through the different issues. You can have policy on paper, you can have interpretation of policy, but once you get this type of department-wide system rolled out in the field, we want to be able to make sure we've got all our I's dotted and T's crossed.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that point, because we've said several times throughout this presentation, unfunded state mandate over and over again, like the state is trying to tell us something to do, but this is kind of part of our conversation anyway, in the direction our council wanted to go prior to the passage of this bill. So I just wanted to make sure our residents understood that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I also echo Councilmember Mullica's sentiments in that, in our last strategic planning session, we were already moving this direction, whether the state had passed a bill or not. So I look at this as our council being responsible and responsive and carrying out our plan and not necessarily an unfunded mandate. But I also just want to say thanks, to Chief May and to Heather for putting this together and being proactive. I really appreciate that. I feel like we're going to really be ahead of the 8 ball when other communities are, coming online in 2023, and maybe we'll be able to share some best practices in the future. But my one question, I feel like many of them have already been answered, but I'm curious if there's going to be any additional costs necessary for developing some of the policies that are going to guide this implementation process, or if that's going to be all done internally.
What we're going to do is we're going to do that internally, but we will look at the best practices and also, one thing that we do, as you guys know, our policy and procedure manual is done through a firm, Lexipol, that takes best practices and everything else to put that in place. So we'll make sure that we're doing the best things possible and having the best policies and procedures. Again, and this is for transparency on the part of us and how we do our jobs, but also it's really important for me to make sure that my officers are protected out there, and making sure that they don't record something in a bathroom or something like that. That we have things in place that takes care of them. And then we'll make sure also that all our policies do follow the Senate bill. That's really important. So,
great. And is there going to be any sort of regional collaboration that's happening in Adams County to ensure that there's some level of consistency amongst municipalities, or at least amongst the judicial district?
That's one thing that the district attorney's office has been on board, especially when Commerce City was the first agencies that went to the body-worn cameras. And then Thornton and Broomfield followed right after. I think Westminster is also in the process. So one good thing is all the chiefs meet once a month and we talk about all this, but we do review each other's policies and processes to make sure that we're in line. But again, we just want to make sure that we'll look at our Lexipol and everything else. And once that's completed, again, we want to be open, it'll be in our policy manual, so the public will be able to view it and see it, because that's, our policy is currently online. So again, we really want to make sure that we're open and transparent to what we do.
Yeah, I so appreciate that response. And I also think, perhaps once we get to a point, if council does adopt some sort of, community co-production policing model, that perhaps this is an area that they can jump in and be supportive or helpful with. I guess my last question is, can you share more about the timeline between buying and full implementation for when the officers are going to start wearing the cameras?
So if you guys pass the budget, come January 1, we're going to order all the equipment and make sure it gets here. Again, we'll already, and you guys will understand this. Again, we have several weeks of meetings together when we're talking about the 360 assessment and the prioritization of some of the recommendations. And this one's at the top of that list of trying to get it done. So I'm hoping, I'm getting, here's Heidi. She's kind of sitting there with she's giving me clues. So she says about 6 to 8 weeks after receiving equipment, we should have it up and running and trained and everything. So
great. That's a lot faster than I anticipated. Thank you so much for the info.
I have Councilmember Brown and then Councilmember Peterson.
Hello, Chief. One last question, I think. What's the cost of replacing a camera should it get broken during an event or even just maybe dropped in the toilet or something? I don't know. But is there a warranty period that covers the cameras at all?
The only, if it's broken in, say, a struggle or, it gets broke, they will replace it automatically. That's under the warranty. Again, the only time, at that 120 month replacement after 10 years. It's only a 1-year warranty. So if we don't renew with them and in year 2 they break a camera, we're responsible for it. But up until that 10-year, they take care of all of our equipment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Peterson?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, why is the 10-year lease cheaper than the 5-year lease?
Because you spreading that over 10 years, they're giving us a discount.
Okay, what's the basis of the discount?
It's well,
like now, what's their motive in the discount?
I think, getting us locked into a 10-year plan rather than a 5-year plan.
Okay, and they'll replace that technology within the 10 years, so it won't be 10-year-old technology in a 10-year lease.
Correct. So I can't remember what slide that was on where it showed that they replaced all the cameras, and was it 30 months, 60 months, 90, and then 120. They will replace all of our camera equipment, or body camera equipment.
All right, and is this funding based on current staffing needs?
Correct.
And so,
I'm sorry.
No, please continue.
Our current staffing level. So 70 right now, it's based on 73 body cameras.
Okay, so if the department were to expand by the recommended 7 officers within the 360 survey, that would be obviously an additional cost then, correct?
Correct. So if we add FTEs, police officers, it adds the, so we have to buy the complete camera system for them. Or if we have to buy, or if we expand our fleet, we would have to buy an additional dash cam.
All right, thank you.
So, Chief, I have a question, and it may be, I don't know if it's for you or for Heather. I mean, first, I want to say thank you for this presentation. And what I really appreciate is the regional approach, especially because of all the collaboration that you do with our neighbors. I think it's very important that we have the same system. So that was just smart. So 2 questions. I thought our FTE was more than 73 as a department.
It's 73 sworn. It's 73 sworn, and then
okay.
Are non-sworn. So
okay, I guess I had thought I saw something where we were closer to 80, but we were always just understaffed at 73.
So our 5-year staffing plan, that at the end of that, it was 80.
Okay, are we reaching that? Are we reaching that?
Currently, we're in. Again with that plan from. I think we're in year. Help me out, Heather. I think
we've completed 2 years of the existing 5-year staffing plan. So I think what you're referring to, Mayor Leidy, is a slide in the next presentation that we can go over in terms of the comparison between Verida and the existing and current staffing level.
Perfect. So my second question is, why would we go with a payment plan if we could just pay for it in full? Like, because we've had conversations about our reserve levels, and this is, it's an expense, and even the 10-year expense seems reasonably priced for a product that is going to replenish itself and give us up-to-date equipment. Like, I think the plan is amazing, and this company is very smart. But why would we not just pay for it in full?
Do you want me to take that, Chief?
I'll let you take that.
So I think if you use a comparison of an iPhone, it's very similar. This is ever-changing technology. And so I don't think you can go as far as comparing it to leasing a car. But if you look at the evolution of iPhone technology, the company, there's a market, and the market's even gonna grow as we move forward, especially in Colorado, for this technology. So it benefits us because that way we don't buy the technology and then have to maybe in a couple years as the technology changes, go back and repurchase. I'm sure they'll work out something for organizations that do that. But the incentives are greater for us to do the payment plan because we have the added layers of protection, if you will.
Okay.
The warranty and then the upgrades. And so if you liken that to a phone.
So that does sound, I mean, I don't know. I buy my phones and then I still have the insurance, but I think going to what Councilmember Peterson called it a lease, it's more of a lease and not a purchase. I mean, that's what it seems like. And then at the end of your 10 years, you can extend it for that final year. But because I assumed, because it says 10-year enhanced warranty on that slide, that even if you paid for it, you still got the 10-year package. But you're saying no, if you pay for it in full, it's yours to maintain.
With certain conditions, and certainly I think Commander Waltz can speak more to the specifics, but I mean, you're right. It's more like a lease program. And so it's, does the added layer of protection and the upgrades benefit us greater than the outright purchase? And
I didn't know there was a difference in the agreement. I thought that was the same. So that clarified that. I think it's great. I don't have any problems with it. I'm guessing you're looking for the recommendation. Recommendation by staff was the 10-year enhanced warranty. Does anyone have a comment? Councilmember Brown?
I thought, Meredith, that you were working with the other mayors in Colorado to get a reduced price by buying in bulk. Did that fall through?
No, that was a discussion, and it was interesting because some cities, as Chief spoke to, have been doing this for a while, and they're using a product that's not as great. And so the conversation just turned to, here's some things that we've learned. Like one of the things was make sure you have that FTE for the digital tech. You have to have that. As it started, I think their approach to using the regional product made more sense. And everybody's at a different place in purchasing. So there was no bulk discount. It was more of a discussion about what's the best product and what do you need to keep in mind.
My other question is, at this point, are you looking for consensus to add the money into the budget? Are you looking for consensus that we really want this done because it's something that we really, really want done? What are we giving consensus on at this moment, Heather?
The consensus I'm requesting is on the package, the 10-year payment plan package, FTE, and then if I can get consensus on that, if council wants to then put this discussion on hold, and then we can talk about the budget aspects when we dive into budget and how we're going to pay for it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Because like Joyce said, are there grants or anything we can get to get help with it?
Currently, there are not that we're aware of, but certainly if we become aware of grants and we can leverage our funding, we'll absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Heather.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. I would imagine that if there were grants there right now, the way things are in our country, there would be huge competition for those grants. So good luck. I mean, it would be wonderful if we could find that. I just want to say, I want to give some appreciation to the city manager and Chief May and all the staff that worked on this. This was looks very well researched and it's presented very clearly. I support it. I'd like the 10-year plan. And just wanted to say once again, thank you to the staff.
Thank you. I haven't heard any dissenting voices. Can we at least get a thumbs up for the 10-year plan? All right. Thank you, Chief. Okay. So Heather, you're going to take the next section, or is this Chief May still?
Chief May and Commander Waltz, but I want to echo again, not to sound like a broken record, but maybe I will. So you tell me if I do. So tonight for the staffing plan, we're presenting the very done staffing results in greater detail than we haven't done that yet. You've seen their staffing recommendations. We're going to revisit the 5-year staffing plan and where we're at with our current staffing. So it all ties together. We're not asking for approval or consensus on the 7-year plan. Really, my perspective is this is a roadmap to look towards the horizon. We will evaluate this plan every year because so much can change between now and 7 years. So the plan is built based on new data that came from the very done independent review. And so it's informative in that sense. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief to dive in.
Oh, you're muted, Chief.
Okay, I'm sorry. So tonight, we're also going to cover the restructure and staffing recommendations from Barry Dunn Associates. Again, there's a lot of time. Mayor, do you mind switching to the next slide?
Sure.
So again, this is really important. Barry Dunn identified some things that, as an organization, that would help us become meet our transformational goals. So again, it increases our professional development and accountability of command staff. It's balanced supervisory staff, formalizes supervision on shifts. Also within the organization, also gives more opportunity for promotion and professional development for our future leaders in the organization. It'll help with internal communication, and also it's going to assist us in our commitment to already community-oriented policing, but also community-oriented, data-driven information, and also as a department that we're striving to become a victim-centered policing agency. So again, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things in that Barry Dunn plan that was very important. So our existing 5-year plan, council adopted in 2018, and the goal was in 5 years to get us to officer complement of 80. So currently, like city manager stated, we are 2 years into that plan, where we're sitting at 2020 proposed, we're sitting at 73 sworn officers. So you go to the next slide. So that's how this slide's broken out. It shows where our current staffing level is for 2020, which is 73. The 5-year staffing plan shows us getting to 80. However, after the Barry Dunn assessment, they felt that that we should be at 84, and I'll talk about why we have it at 86 in a little bit. But it's a difference of 13 FTEs from our current to get to that 86 mark. Our current non-sworn is 20.5, and then again, that's where it's at. Where there, Barry Dunn recommends actually 24, but I will talk. That's that digital technician that wasn't accounted for to get us to 26. So again, with sworn and non-sworn additions, it gets us. And then we also felt that 5-year was pretty aggressive to try to get those 18.5 employees in over the next 5 years. So we felt that we should spread it out, and especially with 2021 with COVID, that really put a hurt on us. So so just make sure that we can spread out that to make sure it happens within a 7-year. Our goal is a 7-year plan. Next. So this slide just shows just the numbers and how they're put in place and where they go over the next 7 years. So you'll see in 2021 we don't add any officers, and then we pick it up again in 2022 out to 2027. So one of the things too with so Barry Dunn, they recommended 6 corporals in our patrol division. However, we felt that since we're using 2 sergeants to try to get us so it's a neutral budget impact for us for next year, we're taking the 2 vacant commander positions and and then we're going to also promote internally. So we're going to have 2 vacant sergeant positions. But we felt for better supervision, provide more direct leadership, experience and career growth, we felt that we would like to get those sergeants back rather than add those 6 corporal positions. Again, this adds greater levels of accountability for our staff, hands-on supervision. Again, and it's it helps us with a roadmap moving forward and accomplishing some of those things that we need to do. Again, in the Barry Dunn report, really focusing on training, development, and career planning for all our staff. So I think getting those sergeants back in the mix rather than having 6 corporals is the way to go. So that's my only variance from the Barry Dunn plan. Next slide, please. So this is the civilian staffing proposal. Again, you can see how, those positions are added. Again, all, those that are recommended by Barry Dunn, we'll go over in the next, next couple slides about the, community service officer, the addition of those and some of those duties and what that means. We'll all, talk about, record, eventually maybe a records manager, and then also, especially when we're becoming a more data-driven department, we're going to break apart currently our crime analysts and PIO, and there's also our social media is one person. But we felt with the amount of work and everything else, Barry Dunn felt that we needed to break those 2 positions apart. So we'll hire for a crime analyst. So that's another civilian position that we will be adding. And then again, we'll add 1 digital technician this next year. And then, we'll evaluate that in 2023, see if, how our processes are working, the time, making sure that, because we're going to try to hit those timelines and deadlines of releasing a video in the next couple of years and see if we're capable of doing that. If not, we'll ask for that, that second digital technician if needed. Next slide. So this just breaks it down, just makes it a little clearer what's going to happen. So in 2020, we're going to start the process to, again, the recommendation from Barry Dunn, to get a deputy chief, add 3 lieutenants. And then again, this is a cost neutral due to the 2 vacant commander positions. And we'll hire those lieutenants from within. So those vacancies will free up 2 sergeant positions that we can use those salaries. 2021, the only position that we'll be asking for is that digital technician. 2022, this is where we get back our training sergeant. This is where we, break apart the crime analyst and then we're going to reclassify. Right now, it's a crime analyst PIO. We're going to reclassify that position. And in 2023. You will also, that's when we'll evaluate the new digital technician. And next slide. And then you can see the other things too. The community service officer, this is one of the recommendations Barry Dunn is that they say we reclass our animal control to community service office. And then we add, again, 2 additional community service officers over 24 and year 2025. And what this will do is they'll take some of those, help us with accidents and other duties that'll free up officers so they can do more of the responding to calls and more of the proactive, policing in their areas, in their districts. And then in 2026, the recommendation from Barry Dunn was, to make sure that we take that part-time property evidence technician, and most likely we'll need them as a full-time. The records manager, this is another thing. We're in the process of hiring a records supervisor currently. And in 2024, I'm sorry, I'm going back. I just want to just make it clear, it also to be determined because of some of the stuff, resources. That's also, we'll reevaluate that position again in 2024 and see how if our records division needs extra supervision. Next slide, please. So overall, the revised 7-year staffing plan is, again, 18 and a half new positions, 13 sworn, 5 and a half non-sworn. The projected cost is approximately $1.7 million. Again, and we're not asking for approval, tonight to lock you guys into that price tag, but we will evaluate the needs on an annual basis into because of budget and everything else. But again, this is a roadmap for us. If we can get there, again, there's a lot of work to be done that was identified, and some of those needs. So again, for tonight, though, we're request for consensus on the command staff restructuring, and then the 1 FTE for our digital technician. Next slide.
Chief, can I jump in real quick before you walk council through the remaining slides? I think it's important to draw attention to a couple of things. The deputy chief position that would be part of the command staff restructuring that Chief talked about would be an external recruitment. So within the council memo, there is a budget one-time projection for the need of about $20,000 to hire a recruitment firm, an executive recruiter, to assist us with that recruitment. I'm still in the process of working on hiring an HR director and hope to have an update. Actually, I have a meeting scheduled the first week in October to go over the latest pool of applicants. So we're going to need assistance, external assistance, to go ahead and get this recruitment going. We do currently have 8 vacancies in terms of our police officer positions. So keep that in mind. Unfortunately, we did lose a couple of out of our recent FTO class. And so that current vacancy rate is at 8. Thanks.
Okay. This is just the big picture of our current command structure. If you go to the next slide, it'll break it down a little bit so you can see the slide a little better. So this is the command structure. Chief, admin, technician, eventually right now it's a PIO crime analyst. Eventually that will be the PIO. Then directly under me will be the deputy chief. And then what they'll do, that deputy chief will be in charge of the operations, and they will oversee one commander that will be in charge of patrol and the other one that will be in charge of admin. And if you go to the next slide, then the lieutenants, and then looking at that span of control and more accountability within the organization. Again, it gives us an opportunity to do a lot more mentoring of our first line supervisors. It also will take some administrative duties away from the sergeants that the lieutenant can take to make sure that the sergeants are out there directing and mentoring and coaching their officers on the street. Again, as you guys know, we're a little young as an organization or officers, but we have incredible staff, and again, this just gives that opportunity for better accountability for our organization. Next slide. So again, this is the other side of the week. Within the other lieutenant will also have 3 sergeants. They'll have the traffic team and then also the officers under them. So again, gives lieutenant to really look and direct the personnel and the sergeants and train. Next slide. So the lieutenant of admin, they'll be overseeing investigations, records, community relations, and training. And you can see how that breakdown is that, again, so they can take some of that administrative duty, so they can do a better job of do more coaching of their line level staff. And then also you'll see down there in the purple box, that's where the additional digital specialists will fall in place. Next slide. So again, to support our large organizational transformational goals, the police department recommends to move forward with the outlined command restructure beginning in 2021. One commander to a deputy chief, one commander to a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 2 lieutenants. Add 1 new FTE in 2021, which would be the digital technician. 2022 and future FTE requests will be brought to council for future discussions during future budget cycles. Okay, any questions?
Councilmember Brown?
So we're actually on that, I'm sorry, the last position, the technical person that we want to hire, they would be hired before we order the cameras or after we order the cameras?
It'll be about the same time.
Okay.
So as soon as I get approval, January 1, we'll be ordering the cameras. We'll be, I'll ask permission if I can maybe, post the position before the end of the year so we can get moving on that.
And my next question has nothing to do with what you're asking for, kind of, sort of. How are we doing in recruiting officers? Did we see a drop again after the George Floyd incident, or?
Actually, we've probably, according to the officers, we already went through physical fitness process and oral boards, and they've been very impressed with the applicants that came through. It looks very promising to fill those positions.
Thank you very much, sir.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. What I have is really more of a comment, and I know we've mentioned it before, and I know Chief May that this is a challenge just probably for everybody. But I do want to encourage that in the recruiting that we try to end up or have as a goal a police force that reflects the demographics of our community. So I'm just going to put that pitch out there. I know it's tough, but so that's not a question. I just want to say it. And then I guess I was looking at, when I looked over everything, I know we got the proposed budget coming up, but in that there was something that was called a community relations unit, and that was going to be expanded. And I don't know, what is a community relations unit?
It's the, I think you're talking about the community resource officer.
Yeah, that's probably it. Well, that was going to be my next question. So yeah.
Yeah. So currently, actually, our 2 animal control officers are going to be reclassified as community resource officers. And then we're going to try to add 2 more community resource officers to that. So they will have duties of animal control, but also they're going to take care of, which animal control does already, they take care of a lot of the parking violations on public roadways. And but then they can also assist us in when we have traffic accidents. So it doesn't take 2 officers to do a traffic accident in tows, where those community resource officers go over there and assist with tow sheets and some other duties that frees up officers to go out and do some proactive or directed patrol in their districts.
Yeah, because in the description, it mentions some of the things that you did, but it also mentions mental health awareness, sexual assault awareness, attempt to identify whatever that means. So I was just wondering, is this different than the community resource navigator position that we have right now as a half-time person?
Yeah.
It is, Councilmember Goff. And just to back up one step, you did read 2 positions for community relations, and I believe, Chief, that would be currently we have Officer Lund, and I'm going to forget, and another, is it just Officer Lund or who else?
Officer Lund and Officer Chris Miller. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so those 2 positions are really focused on community policing events like Shred-a-thon, Safe Street Halloween, and that sort of thing. But then the other piece that we'll talk about with budget is the addition of a 0.5 FTE for the community resource navigator. So we've been using that position in somewhat of a pilot process right now. And if you want to get into it now, we can, or we can hold that discussion for the larger budget discussion.
That's fine to hold on it, but I also just want to clarify. I know, I do know this, but just also for everybody else to hear, and maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but the community resource navigator is considered part of the police department.
No.
No, okay.
No, it's
all right. So so we'll wait till later. That's fine, because then I wasn't clear on that.
right. And your questions are good questions, because we're calling a lot of things community something. Mm-hmm. So community service officer, right now it's animal control. And then we have code enforcement officer. So we'll need to work through some of the nomenclature in terms of these positions. But the CSOs are different than the community resource navigator, different than the community relations officers.
Okay, thank you. That was just, I just needed that a little bit of clarification. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilmember Escobar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Chief, for your work in putting this, and Heather, for that matter, in putting this together and presenting it for us this evening. I have a couple of questions that I just want to explore with you. First is, I guess Councilmember Goff asked a number of my questions, which I really appreciated. I was a bit confused about the language that we were using around community resource officers and community support officers, or whatever the terminology is. So that was really helpful. But I think that, she had asked a question around, or made a comment around wanting to make sure that the applicants that we were recruiting for officers were diverse. And I want to take that statement one step further and kind of put it to you. Like, what is the department doing to recruit a diverse pool of applicants that represents the communities that we have here in Northglenn?
So, one of the things that we've done is we've held job recruitments at some of the churches. One of the churches was our mosque in our community. So we've done that. We've also going out, to our military and everything else. And I can tell you, this last pool of applicants, we have a very diverse group. And we added additional language to our job posting also. But again, I think, when we start talking about some things in the future and getting, reaching out and collaborating with our community, getting ideas and other ways, what astounding number, national numbers, that only like 5% of law enforcement police officers in their community come from their community. So, I think this is an incredible opportunity for us to, especially, with the Stand Up to Race and Equity Board, co-production policing and some of that conversation that's coming. I think this gives us opportunity to really engage our community and start bringing homegrown police officers into our organization. So, again, right now, Jenny, Councilwoman Wilford, we are trying to engage in some of that in our advertising and marketing, to try to get that diverse group. But I can tell you it was.
I think you may be frozen, Chief.
I got him.
I think I missed the end of that. You were a bit frozen there for a moment.
But again, we have a very diverse group going through this process currently.
Great. I'm really glad to hear that. Couple more questions for you. Can you remind me why we're looking at a deputy chief, and have we ever had that position before?
We have. This was in 2008. We had a deputy chief, and then we went through the Great Recession, and that was one. And then that individual retired, and we didn't fill that position. So one of the things it helps us do, and I'm going to read from Barry Dunn. It just, a deputy chief of police position needs to function at an elevated level that currently not within the scope of the commander position. The reclassification of one commander position allows us to create this position, and that gives them the ability to oversee, a lot of the day-to-day operational type stuff and work with the commanders. And then this frees me up to really look, deal with a lot of the vision, the policies, some of that executive level, stuff that I had, deal with, the collaboration with other organizations and chiefs. And again, where we're going, some of the recommendations, by Barry Dunn, there's some opportunities for me to assist with that development, that vision on those priorities. So I think that's why to assist, to really assist me and to take our organization to the next level. I think that's why we are way too flat right now. We have probably one of the flattest organizational structures in the metro. And so this just gives us, again, that next level.
Okay, I appreciate that and completely understand it. And then two last questions for you. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with not seeing any sort of staff in the plan for this year or even within the next 7 years to start tackling mental health challenges or some challenges that could be answered by social workers or other professionals in our field that don't necessarily need to be handled by an officer. And I'm having a tough time understanding why that is, because I feel like we've got this really great report that talks about the need to kind of diversify the way that we're doing things, but the staffing plan feels like we're continuing business as usual. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that and if you envision having a conversation for how we are able to better separate mental health crises from emergency services.
City manager and I were talking about this earlier today, and would you like the city manager?
Well, I'll kick it off and then you jump in and touch on the conversations with Community Reach. So I think we're in the early stages of figuring out how we can move forward in this space. And so one of the great things about having Jessica on board, our community resource navigator, is with that 0.5 FTE plan for next year, if council approves it, she's going to have the bandwidth to really help us start having the conversations and figuring out, making the connections with organizations. What can we do in terms of creating a co-response team is how she's referring to it internally within the police department. And that may be several staff members in addition to partnering with an organization like Community Reach. Could be free, it could be on a contractual basis. So my hope is that as we move forward with really moving forward the navigator position, not only addressing issues of homelessness, but also broadening that navigator scope, is that we're able to put a plan together and then have future discussions with City Council about what additional resources we might need in that regard. So I think we're just in the early stages. And Chief, do you want to talk about the conversations you've had with Jessica and then with Community Reach?
Yeah. And again, one thing that this assessment clearly pointed out is that we're stretched really thin. And then, again, spreading, the resources out over 7 years, it's going to take us a while to get that. So we have to be really strategic on how we put things together and how we prioritize those lists of 45 items that we have to put in place. Again, so we have to think of creative ways and outside the box ways to actually address and deal with some of the situations that you brought up. And one of the things that we reached out to the director of the Reach Center a while ago, and so again, what the city manager said on bringing in the navigator and everything else, but a co-responder team, and again, how that looks and puts that together is one of those processes, for the future. So, again, there's a lot of work, and I know you're going to see, unfortunately for you guys, you're going to see me quite a bit over the next month or so, bringing things back to you and going over some of the things that we've prioritized. But again, we're listening. The big thing that I want to make sure that you guys understand, we're listening. You have a great police department, and we've done more with less for many years, and we'll continue to do great work. And And again, to serve our community is at the front of where our heart is. So again, you know, there's more to come. I'll put it that way.
No, and I appreciate the response, and I think we can both agree that we have a great department, but I still think it's important for us to continue to evolve and meet the needs of our community. I guess, you know, I feel like we had the conversation and are going to dive in a bit more in, you know, specifically about the community resource navigator, but I think it's an important distinction to make that this individual does not work for the police department. And so I don't want us to get in the business of kind of commingling those two roles when this individual is not necessarily going to be able to respond to mental health calls. And I think that I would like to see just a little bit more urgency when it comes to figuring out how we're answering some of those calls, because having mental health professionals on staff will help with some of the load that officers are carrying that they don't necessarily need to be burdened for, and they're also not trained for. So for example, Westminster just announced that they're hiring 2 licensed therapists in coordination with, I believe that it's Community Reach Center. And those 2 individuals are going to work directly for Westminster. And so there are things that are happening right now. There are departments that are working towards including mental health professionals in their model. Denver just announced that they were also adding mental health professionals as well as some additional community resource folks. Broomfield also has a program. Lakewood has a program as well. So I don't think, you know, I really appreciate that, you know, you're looking at the staffing recommendations as forward thinking. I don't look at them as forward thinking. I look at them as continuing to staff in the same way that we always have. And I just want to, like, I don't look at them as looking outside of the box. I want us to, I guess I want to challenge you to figure out how we're doing more to take work off of our officers' plates that they're not equipped to do. I guess the last question I have is, you know, getting community feedback. We say we implement a community-centered policing model. How are we getting community feedback specifically on this plan?
On our current plan? So
on the plan that you're proposing this evening.
So tonight we're taking just best practices and the recommendations from the Barry Dunn assessment.
And I hear that. I'm just curious how we're talking to the community about the direction that you're proposing the department go, since we don't have a community co-production policing model.
Well, let me jump in, Chief, real quick, because I think there's another piece that is scheduled to come to council next Monday, which is the discussion about a hybrid board model with community co-production policing. So I'm going to lay out options for council to consider, because stepping back, I did not receive council consensus to move forward with development of a hybrid model. So council asked me to come back to you with costs of what it would take to continue the conversation, to create community engagement, and then what options do you have in moving forward some type of hybrid model? So that discussion is going to take place next Monday. I was not able, given the limitations on my time and everything else we have going on, to make that part of tonight's discussion and to fit it in before tonight's discussion. So that will be next week. And I think that will help address some of your concerns, Mayor Pro Tem Wolford, in terms of how are we continuing the discussion. But ultimately, I need to receive guidance from council to continue that discussion. So up to this point, from an operational perspective, council has not said, let's shift focus and let's move down this path. I think it's been a gradual evolution, and that's why I keep referring to it. We're at the beginning stages of looking at how we can better utilize our community resource navigator to start these discussions. These are discussions our organization has not had historically, and I think they're important discussions to have. But given the resource and capacity limitations, we do have to be creative, and I think we are being creative in terms of tapping into Jessica's expertise, the informed data that Barry Dunn's assessment provided. So if council desires something more from in that space through this budget, then you need to please articulate that and help me understand what you're looking for so I can come back and Chief and I can better meet the needs of what council's looking for.
So can I ask a question, Chief? Then it'll be, sorry, Councilmember Escobar, it kind of piggybacks on this. Who pays for our advocates? Because those are really awesome mental health people. I know we partner with Thornton, but where does that fall in the budget?
So yes, we pay 30% for the victim advocates. They are actually employees of Thornton, but we share the cost. The nice thing, we currently have room for, we used to only have one at our department. With the new building, they're able to house 2 victim advocates up here all week long. So yeah, but it's a shared cost, a cost sharing with Thornton. It's another partnership.
Well, and my experience has been that I think even the outfit, it's a terrible word. The uniform had both logos. I know their letterhead has both logos, so they definitely support Northglenn. And I had the pleasure of speaking with one of them at our mask event, like highly skilled, highly trained, such an asset. So, yeah. Antonio, Councilmember Escobar.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I just want to say, first of all, I guess I want to commend you for the reorganization that you are recommending or planning on proposing and your reclassifications. When I came into the Northglenn Police Department as a volunteer, I saw a chief, I saw a bunch of generals, and I saw a few sergeants, and I wondered, what's wrong with this picture? Now the picture's become a little clearer. We have a chief, a deputy chief, 2 commanders instead of 4 commanders, and then 3 lieutenants, which obviously were missing in the structure. I thinking in my military brain, you have the soldier, you have the sergeant, and then you have the leader, the lieutenant, and then you have the brass that comes above that. So I just want to say thank you. I think it'll make a tremendous amount of difference going forward. I look forward to see what actually develops. So thumbs up. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
There I go. Councilmember Brown and then Councilmember Duran Malika.
Chief, I'm not going to blow your head up anymore, but you are wonderful and your department is wonderful and we appreciate everything you do for the city of Northglenn. I was talking to a woman in Thornton this weekend about an incident and she had nothing but nice things to say about the Northglenn Police Department. So that's awesome when they're reaching out to us from other communities. My question to you is I am confused with the SROs and I know you've gone over it again. Did we pull out our school resource officers?
No.
No, where do they fall in?
Admin.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was my only question. I just wanted to find out where we fell with that. Heidi needs her own computer. I know, but it says SRO and then you called it something else. And then I was like, okay.
I went too fast on that slide. I'm sorry.
I forgive you at this point. Just wanted to make sure we still had them. Thank you so much for your time. Great job. Proud to have you as the chief of Northglenn and your officers too, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Malika.
All right, thank you. So, Chief, I'll admit, I do feel like I need to have a glossary to define all of these terms you're using. So I wanted to ask just one quick question. What do you mean by victim-centered policing? It seems like a new term I haven't heard before.
Well, I'm going to have to blame a couple of my council people for that several years ago. One of the things, too, is one of the goals in our thing is make sure that we put victims first, right? And start by believing, when we kick that campaign off, the thing is, it's one thing just saying it. It's another thing putting it into your policies, your procedures. When your victim advocates sit on debriefs with cases, again, we just, integrate that throughout the whole thing. So some of the things and comments that came back from Barry Dunn that I was disappointed in, especially after kicking off to Start Believing, is that they felt that, we needed to do more. So over the next, that's that prioritization of some of those recommendations. And I can tell you that we're going to bring in some national experts to assist us when it comes to interview and interrogation techniques, because there is a difference from interrogating a suspect and interviewing a victim, right? And sometimes and this is department wide, where we want to make sure that we're not interrogating victims, we're interviewing victims. And that's it's just certain techniques that we can use or utilize and be more professional. But again, it's making sure that we keep our victims informed. That we keep, and again, doing additional training for all our staff when they're dealing with, trauma-based, doing trauma-based interviews, because, they can be different, they can be challenging, and you have to be compassionate and empathetic to what they're going through to best serve them. So I guess I hope I answered it, but that's where I want to be. When we're not quite there yet, we do a lot of things good. I think my detectives are absolutely amazing on some of the stuff they're doing. It's just bringing in a different perspective and more ideas and on this topic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I was like, well, I think I have an idea of what he's talking about, but I wanted to hear it from you. One of the things I think that would be helpful, because, some of these terms that are coming out of these discussions are, might seem very high level or, fancy words. It would be kind of nice to see like even like a strategic plan specific for the PD that includes terms and how is it that you're actually trying to work towards, some of these things, because I think it could be really informative. I mean, if that sounds like great work. And so I, as a council member and a citizen, want to know how you're trying to accomplish that. And what is it that you're trying to implement? Because, you're putting all this effort into, kind of restructuring, changing culture, changing practice, and I think it's important to talk about it in a way that our residents, get what you're meaning and really understand and are with us on those changes. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Lady.
Oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Mollica touched on strategic planning, and I think it'd be great, Chief, if you can talk about next steps. So getting command staff restructured. You had been started down the path of strategic planning. We put that on hold so we could do the PD assessment. So take it from there and talk about what you'd like to move forward.
So again, incorporating what we learned from the 360 assessment and develop, and again, that's that prioritization of work. Developing our, our strategic plan internally, but also most likely come back to council with that strategic plan to put it into our public safety strategic plan for the city as well. So you guys can see that of where we're moving. So, keeping everybody informed. And again, but on top of all the other stuff we're doing, we're also doing some really good police work out there as well too. So again, I think that, this strategic plan and so we just make sure that we prioritize the first 45 recommendations, and then we'll build that into our police department strategic plan that will also go into the city public safety strategic plan.
So just to add, what you'll see is in the current city council strategic plan, there's a public safety priority. You're going to see that the components underneath, the objectives underneath that strategic priority change and evolve. So if council decides to move forward with the next steps with CCPP, and that discussion next week, those processes that you have options for will help inform further prioritization work. And so that'll all culminate in a new strategic plan for the department, and that'll help inform what are the top priorities that'll then rise to the council level in terms of getting your support and buy-in.
I was just going to say that I appreciated Councilmember Malika, kind of wrapping that up and offering that suggestion. I agree, because I know that sometimes city manager and chief of police, you're working on a strategic plan that's very detailed and has a lot of steps that might feel very high level. And so what I heard and I agreed with is having a version, or making sure that the actual version is very resident friendly and that some of those terms are defined. And if, you had already mentioned, kind of wordsmithing some of the titles so they're not confusing. But what I heard in the presentation was the same thing that I've been hearing for the last few months, which is this really reflective growth mindset focus of our department. And the partnership that Heather and Chief may have, I think, is great. I mean, it's, from my perspective, it seems like a very healthy partnership, and the two of you are doing really focused work. What I appreciate most about the restructuring plan is that it will give Chief the ability to do the executive work. And I think sometimes we forget. And when you don't have the deputy, as it were, you're running around putting all the fires out on your own. And that's keeping you from leading in the way that you have expressed that you would like to. So every time you speak, you talk about mentorship, training, growing your team. And so if this restructure gives you the time and space to do that, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Was there anybody else that wanted to weigh in on this topic? No? Okay. Did you guys get the direction you needed from council tonight?
Just to do a quick check-in, I think we did. So next steps for command restructuring, we're going to bring back pay plan summary amendments to a council meeting in October and ask council to officially reclassify the position. So the two vacant commanders will become new titles, and then we'll do the other reclassifications. So that's when you'll see this come back to you in October.
Councilmember Brown?
When we reclassify those positions, are we bumping up salaries? Or do we think that the people that we reclassify are going to go, okay, I'll be a lieutenant now, but not expect additional funds?
No, positions that are reclassified, pay ranges will shift. But so for the positions that will, so deputy chief's going to be an external recruitment, and that'll be a higher salary range, and a salary range that doesn't exist today. Not higher, it doesn't exist today, but we've created it. So, but we believe that the cost for that position will be cost neutral because we currently do have the vacancy savings from the officer positions, and Jason can get into more of this in terms of how he accounts for that and how he's put together those projections for budget 2021. And then the positions that we'll do internal recruitments for lieutenant, there will be a move to minimum, if not maybe a little above minimum, depending on the situation and whether or not there's any unhealthy compression. But that lieutenant range is also going to be a new salary range that we haven't had. So again, we believe those costs will be pretty cost neutral, but there will be the cost to hire the recruiter to help us with that deputy chief recruitment.
Thank you, Heather. Sorry, I had to get my night-night kiss.
That's okay. Yes. Good night. Okay. Well, thank you both for presenting. I think we're moving into the presentation that Jason Loveland will have. so I can share my screen. Welcome, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
All right. I will drive. Are we ready?
We are ready. So just quickly on this piece of the agenda, we'll cover a quick overview of revenues and expenditures, try to connect the new spending that's more operational to our vision and goals. Quick personnel discussion, which we're probably about 90% of the way through that discussion with what we've talked about so far today. And then we provided some capital improvement program information summarized in the presentation, but some detail with worksheets in the packet tonight. So as we've talked about extensively during COVID, revenue forecasting is a new level of confusion, I guess, with the public health crisis. The economy is changing depending on what orders put out. And so trying to keep track of that has been, a challenge. And we kind of see that going into 2021 since there's no necessarily sight and end, or end sight, I guess, of the restrictions for people to gather, for people to congregate as usual. Food establishments, restaurants, bars, things of that sort, make up a healthy portion of our economy in Northglenn. And so that has a major impact, even as we're kind of rolling out of the tighter restrictions, predicting, second waves and things of that sort. Really make us want to proceed cautiously as we forecast into 2021. And this isn't just sales and use tax. This impacts other areas. We've seen large reductions with recreation, capacities being limited, park use, things of that sort. So really every revenue stream really has been negatively impacted. So we'll keep that in mind as we roll into 2021 as well. And one thing due to that, we may be revising revenue estimates more often. One revision that we may see, just to put that out there for this discussion, is due to COVID, the preliminary assessed valuations got pushed back, being due to the cities from the county from August 25th to October 12th. So since it's not an assessment year this year, we're not expecting major changes in the assessed valuation as we calculate our property tax revenues. But we won't know that until potentially October 12th. I can't get anybody to give me a firm answer on what's going to happen because they don't have the numbers done yet. But that could play a role in the 2021 revenue forecast as we move forward. So we'll probably be on top of that more than we have been in the past. I mean, this past year, we've been on top of the revenue forecast significantly. And that'll probably continue through 2021, just as the health crisis changes. Next slide, please. So we've talked about sales and use tax. Obviously, that's our greatest revenue source. And you'll see here an updated number that we haven't talked about on the far right is our sales and use tax percentage compared to 2019 was actually flat in July. So we've gone from falling sales and use tax of 25% back up to 0% in July. So I'm excited to see what August brings. And that could influence future projections as well for the end of 2020 and then maybe how we take a look at 2021 as well. So those taxes are just due today. And so it takes us a week or two to get all of that in and processed. So that red line, you'll notice, that's kind of that V-shaped curve that we talk about You can't see my mouse that I'm drawing with right now, but I'm drawing a great picture. So as long as that stays steady at 0% through the rest of the year, we would end 2020 down 5% in our sales and use tax. And that's a positive. We had projected early on, as Heather had mentioned, maybe up to 12% down. So if we can hang strong for the next several months, we may be able to, see a 5% reduction. That's not necessarily positive, but it's more positive than what we had planned. Let's see. All right, next slide, please. So for 2021, in this forecast that we have in the proposed budget right now, so we have sales tax rebounding marginally, about 3% from where we think 2020 will end. So when you look at, we had projected 3% growth, we'll probably be more at a decline of 5%. And so rebounding for 2021 will still be short of where we were in 2019. So we talk about, the short-term impacts, but then the longer range impacts that it may have, where to come out of this, it may take a year or two to get back to kind of where we had been in 2019. Intergovernmental revenue sources are expected to be lower. So transportation tax, highway user tax, those are significant revenue streams through the state and county. As travel, as spending, things of that sort are reduced, our share of those taxes is obviously reduced as well. On the enterprise fund side of things, in the forecast, we have at year 4 of the 5-year plan that we had established in 2017. So a blended 5.3% utility rate increase on the water and sewer bill. We are expecting lower levels of recreation and event revenue coming into 2021. Again, the health crisis is going to impact what we're able to do, how we can get people together. And then of note, development revenues. So we talk about Carl's Farm and the development that will happen on that property. So when we talk about one-time development revenues that are not included, so those are things, water and sewer tap fees, development review, use tax on construction. Those could be pretty significant revenues. They're not included here. Kind of our policy is to plan our revenue sources conservatively. And being one-time revenues, we would probably have these tack on to fund balance more so than used for planning our 5 to 10 year expenditure planning. Next slide, please. So in 2021, on the side of expenditures, you're familiar with this from the spring, that we had asked departments to reduce, non-personnel spending. That carried into the budget planning for 2021. So each department was asked to reduce or maintain those reductions that we implemented in 2020 through 2021, somewhere between 10 and 15% where possible. Again, no services were necessarily taken off the table in the reduction. And we're trying to align, any new spending with our core services and then strategic planning priorities. We've mentioned already 2 general fund options that we'll discuss, and then we'll continue with the capital investments. The rec center construction will continue. We've issued debt for those, for that construction project specifically. And then we'll talk about some of the utility pieces that are also separate and less impacted by revenues from sales and use tax. Next slide, please. So this slide, I won't read it. This was just going from our starting point of what the 2019 to 2023 vision statement is, really just to set the framework to make sure that our spending is in alignment with the vision. Next slide, please. And again, this slide is just to set the framework of the 8 priority areas in the strategic plan. And the number at the top, about $3 million of new money. This is new to 2021, how that funding is being allocated. So it's not that we took money away from these elements that we've put in place in prior years, but this is kind of a summary of what the next several slides will show. So next slide, please. In those areas, you'll see of that $3 million, the allocation, just kind of a different way to visualize it. In a pie chart, you'll see heavy investment into our infrastructure, which is so valued. And then throughout the list, high performance government, public safety, and so on. We'll look at the details in the next slides. So as you can see here, a few key areas for high performance government. The biggest one on this list is the recreation center staffing. This we'll talk about more on the personnel side of things, but as we build the facility and are able to operate it, there's a desire to have more programming, more staffing to really deliver an amazing experience for the users of what is sure to be an amazing building. So we have an employee survey to get feedback and follow up from the past, a Microsoft Office email. So that is a new email system to replace GroupWise. So that is included in the budget. And then of course, some standard things with network servers and whatnot. Next slide. On the community engagement side of things, we want to reach back out to the community and get feedback, see how we're doing versus what we had done a couple of years ago. That's been included in the budget, the proposed budget for 2021. Next slide, please. And then on the public safety side, there's just a couple of things not included in this information. Was what we had just discussed with body worn cameras and staffing adjustments, but things are going up. North Metro Task Force, the Victim Services IGAs, and then the ongoing need to replace vehicles and make sure that our fleet is in good condition and we're making replacements as necessary. It's kind of an ongoing operational element, but we do change that number on a yearly basis depending on what the needs are throughout the organization. Next slide, please. Housing opportunities, things that will impact housing and the overall outlook of the city is the comprehensive plan with $100,000 budgeted to complete that project. If you remember, we had started that about a year ago. We did some in-house work, some consulting work. I think we're going to be doing more of that with some internal staff heading some of that charge. And then another $100,000 is necessary to wrap that project up in hopefully 2021, depending on the outreach and the feedback that the planning department receives. Next slide, please. To tackle the diverse community initiative, diversity initiative, budget of $75,000 to help address specific trainings and also other elements that are not yet identified coming out of diversity work that we're doing now. And an aging needs study for $16,000 is included as well. And then the next slide, please. And then on the infrastructure side, you have detailed worksheets on these. But if you have any questions, we can touch on those. But there's kind of a big picture. This is new money. This isn't the whole capital program that we have. Obviously, construction of water and the lift station and force main, the rec center, and our road maintenance work that we do. Those are not included here. This is just new money specific to 2021. So if you go to the next slide, please. So here's where we had mentioned kind of two options being presented. Option A is what the detailed worksheets are that you have now in this packet. You'll see highlighting that a balanced general fund budget, police command staff restructure, part-time homeless navigator, or community resource navigator. Apologies if I mixed the name up on that. Another initiative included in this is last year we took the first step to getting to a $15 minimum wage and increased our minimum wage to $13.65. This is taking that to the next level and reaching that goal that we had to get to the $15 minimum wage. We knew that that was going to be a multi-year effort, and we feel that adding that in 2021 is, the recommended route that we go. In option A, there's over 19 FTE to support the new recreation center. 6 lifeguards, 3 custodians. There's more detail in the memo outlining these positions. The $219,000 price tag on this is for assuming the FTE start in the final quarter of 2021. So October, November, December. Depending on the health situation, depending on timing of construction, those things could change. There could be less need for more programming. I'm not going to jinx the actual construction. So we'll just say that the health situation will potentially could cause less programming and less of a need for those staff. And then in option A pay freeze that we could potentially evaluate mid-year, depending on how the economy recovers on the revenue side of things. The other alternative on option B suggests that we would use about $680,000 of reserves out of the general fund. But it does include everything that's in option A. We've had a conversation about the body cameras, dash cameras, and the digital specialist. And then it also includes salary adjustments, really that mirror what we did in 2020 as far as the percentages and those commitments to the sworn officer group. So if we go to the next slide, this summarizes the staffing levels over the last several years and what is being proposed for 2021. You'll see the green bar indicating parks, recreation, and culture. Those increased staff are included there. And the homeless navigator, and then code enforcement also with a reduction of 1 officer and their complement. So as you can see, relatively flat. The new recreation center comes with new additional resource needs. And that's where the largest impact for 2021's proposed budget are. And then the next slide. And please jump in. This is option A. you can see the net change in fund balance is indicated there as a positive $8,600. So option A, that's where we identified the balanced budget. We also put out forecasts for the next 10 years. So this goes from 2022 and then on to the next page. It's just showing what the impacts may look like as you forecast out years. So on the expenditure side, in the out years, it does include increased staffing for police. It does include more staffing at the rec center, but it does also include recreation revenues kind of catching up, program revenues catching up to themselves. So those programs won't be fully operational for a year or two. When you start a program, to get it fully at full capacity with those programs. So those are expected to lag a year or two. So that's what option A for 2021 budget looks like. If you go to the next slide, and I guess actually skip to the next one. Option B, not to include all of those items from option A, and then this is what that budget looks like for 2021. With revenues being the same, and then moving forward with the additional expenditures for the salaries and body-worn cameras. Okay, go ahead to the next slide, please. Or actually skip that one as well if you want. So taking a look at the general fund reserves, when we talk about where those sit, there's just a history from 2015 moving forward of that growth that we've seen in the reserve, going from 19.5 million to 25.5 million to end 2019. 2020, we're expecting, a revenue shortfall of around $2.4 million. And then we had made that commitment for the residential street program to kind of ignite that work of $2.2 million. So you'll see, that has been either planned or expected due to the pandemic to see that reduction from 25.5 to 20.9 million. You will see the next two bullets along the forecast are 2021 option A or option B, and what that would look like to the general fund. The dashed red line is our 25% minimum required that we have established, which is just about $7 million. So you can see from 20 million to 7 million is kind of the range that we have over and above the minimum that we need to keep. So next slide, please. And actually, you can skip this slide. We may come back to it if there's discussion. So this is a summary of the information that's in all of the numbers in the packet. This is just kind of a summary for presentation purposes, taking a look at Conservation Trust, major projects, Greenway Trail, playground, a court, expecting lottery proceeds to be flat year over year. Next slide, please. So on the capital project side of things, remember the main revenue sources are listed there. The biggest project, the recreation center, is being funded through our COPs that were issued. But major projects on Huron and Washington Streets, and then 120th Avenue, and then a traffic signal upgrade that we're expected, fingers crossed, to receive a grant for to make major upgrades to the traffic signals. So you can see that ending fund balance there of $26 million. And that does not include, well, it's assuming that the recreation center project is complete. So that $26 million is made up of restricted revenues through the property tax, sales, marijuana, open space, and transportation tax, and just general fund transfer dollars that we have been committing the last several years of $1.7 million. All of those are tucked into that $26 million number. On the next slide, the water fund budget, major projects there, waste handling improvements, and filter to waste automation. Again, this budget is option A, so this is not inclusive of any paid salary adjustments to this fund. Next slide, please. The wastewater fund, very significant project for lift station A in the force main. We're expecting to issue wastewater revenue bonds of $22 to $25 million at the end of this year. So we'll see that huge expenditure number that's in the budget for 2021. We're going to assume that we take on the funding of that debt in 2020 and then spend it starting in 2021. It'll probably be a multi-year project. So it shows a huge change in fund balance, that net change number of a negative 27, but that's why. That's assuming we're taking in $25 million and then spending 25. It's just staggered between years 2020 and 2021. Next slide. Then on the stormwater fund, no proposed change to the service rates in this fund. There's capital investments of $482,000, which we have detailed in the capital projects attachment in the packet. So you can see an ending fund balance of just under $700,000 in the stormwater fund. And then the last fund here on the next slide, sanitation. No proposed rate changes in the sanitation fund. The biggest thing here is capital investment for two trash vehicles for that replacement. So you see a net change, a small net change of $44,000 to the negative, and an ending fund balance of $1.9 million in the sanitation fund. And so I know that we kind of flew through that, and if we want to go back to touch on anything, we can do that now, or we can keep going forward and then circle back if you want.
It looks like Councilmember Goff has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is something that you'd already touched on, so that's why I'm bringing it up now. Back on slide 54, which was the pie chart, and you'd shown priorities, the strategic priorities, new funding. There were two items that have 0%. That was business retention and growth, and then the other one was sustainability. So I'm just wondering, so that's 0% new funding. So I'm assuming they're going to get some continued funding, and how much is, would we know how much that is or what that is? I'm just a little confused, or not confused, but curious, because we have whatever these 8, strategic goals, priority areas, and there's 2 of them that seem to have 0 new funding.
Yeah, let me grab that for just a second. Let me pull that up.
Which slide? Do you want me to project it?
No, I think I can answer the details that the Councilmember Goff had.
Okay.
I just need to look here.
Talking about slide 54, Meredith, just if you're curious.
Okay.
So there is continued funding through that. It was just not new to the next year. So business retention and growth last year. So we broke it out into basically new dollars. So a couple different ways. Last year we looked at it as kind of a in total, you know, what is exactly being, you know, what's being supportive of business retention and growth organizationally. So our entire economic development department, you know, is committed to that. Last year there was $25,000 of new dollars that was added to that. A lot of it was professional services and study related services with training, registration, and then, you know, supporting services. So that's continuing into 2021. And then on the sustainability, those will continue as well. And some of those were studies in 2020 that we'll be looking to either wrap up at the end of 2020 and take on moving forward. But a couple of those were composting and single stream evaluation. Let me see here. We had invested in some stormwater software for tracking for sustainability purposes. Let's see. We also will continue on with our zero waste at events programming that we implemented in 2020. So there's a handful of pieces. So it's not that those are getting no support. It's just, to your point, no additional funds in 2021's proposed budget. A lot of that is on the basis of what's ongoing from 2020, and then additional reduced revenues as we look into 2021 and trying to balance the budget as best as possible.
Okay, I think that answers my question for now. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to piggyback on some of those questions that was just asked. Specifically, I guess this may be more of a process question for you, Heather. I know when we had a study session, I don't know if it was a month or two ago, specifically with an update around some of the ongoing city efforts for our sustainability plan. I think that there was almost a gap in education that exists, and there was a commitment to doing some additional education and having more conversations about the direction that we wanted to go with some of the sustainability initiatives. So is that conversation going to happen, and then that's going to be fed into this existing budget, or are we just not going to do anything around sustainability in 2021?
That's a great question, Mayor Pro Tem. Brooke, do you want to jump in here and talk about the strategy we've discussed based on that recent council feedback?
Yeah, so I think we are not proposing any additional budgeted. We have $25,000 identified for 2020 or for 2021 that will go to supporting ongoing efforts such as the Charge Ahead program, the residential program. Those things are still going to happen, but we're not proposing anything beyond the $25,000 that we've identified for next year's budget. We are going to be coming forward with some recommendations in terms of further prioritization of, I think I just froze.
No, you're good. Continue.
We can still hear.
Yep, you're frozen.
Okay, there we go. Hey, what do you know? I'm back. Okay, everybody just went. So, but our goal is to come back with a more of a strategic approach, top down and bottom up, because we talk about engaging the sustainability committee in terms of doing the green building code initiatives, as well as some helping with other prioritizations, and using that committee as sort of the sounding board as to setting what those priorities are. Because the big thing that we have with both of the, with the two efforts that we've done so far is that there's so many different, the spectrum is so large. We're trying to figure out how do we get our best value for sustainability initiatives. And I know Jason just mentioned the waste stream analysis and really trying to understand how recycling really does work for the community, and composting and those two integral components are kind of merged into this study. But I think more importantly is that through one of the other things that we put on hold, not just the comprehensive plan, but also the transportation plan, we're going to be looking at implementing Connect Northglenn through that. And I think that with a lot of the things that Public Works is looking to undertake with the residential street program and things of those nature, you're going to start to see a lot of the sustainability initiatives working themselves into our everyday operational programming. It's just that it's not going to be the big show. It's not going to be a big thing that you're going to see jump out and go, oh my gosh, this is a game changer, because we're not quite there yet. And part of that is because of COVID, and the other part is that we just really haven't set what those priorities are.
And can I ask a follow-up question, Brooke? Is that sustainability committee, that's all internal, right? There's no community participation?
We have the outward-facing sustainability committee that I believe you participated on. That's the outward-facing one. And Becky's actually in the process of engaging those folks again about what level of interest there is to still participate. And we're working through that. The first thing that we're going to take on with them is the Green Building Code initiatives, but we also want to hear from them as to what they think is important and report that back to City Council. We also have an internal stakeholder committee that also works on the water conservation, the waste reduction, and then also operational efficiencies such as fleet and things of that nature.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you talking about is the group that was established to figure out how we lead some energy reduction and energy efficiency programs within the city via the Excel Partners and Energy Program. I didn't realize that that was actually an established group that was receiving that was having any regular ongoing conversations about sustainability efforts.
We have not because of COVID, but our goal is to reboot that group.
Sorry about that. My my best friend's daughter's excited about dinner, or not actually. I appreciate that there are conversations and that there's so much happening within the city. I guess I just am feeling a little frustrated because I feel like we've been having these conversations about sustainability and like building plans and figuring out how we were going to prioritize things since I joined council, and I'm just not seeing a whole lot of movement. And the urgency here for me is really coming from the reality that our state's on fire, and we've had the worst climate or the worst wildfire season that we've seen in decades in Colorado. The air quality is the worst in the nation. We're in an ozone unattainment zone. We've got the governor's goals around climate, around carbon reduction. And while I certainly appreciate that we're going to continue, zero waste programs at our events, we haven't had very many in-person events, and I don't know what that looks like in the future. I guess additionally, I'm really concerned that we haven't had the conversation around what our greenhouse gas emission reduction plan looks like in Northglenn. We haven't set those goals, but we've had that report for over a year. I guess I'm also having a really tough time with the reality that we're going to continue to buy fossil fuel vehicles that are contributing to the transportation emissions, which are the highest in our community. So I guess I was really hoping to see some forward thinking here around, if 2021 I recognize we're not going to be able to, reduce our emissions by 50% or 100%, but I was looking for something like a little bit more thoughtful in terms of like, maybe we're going to conduct a EV readiness plan and start figuring out how how our city starts transitioning towards electric vehicles, not tomorrow, but in the future, maybe by 2040, which is something that so many communities around us are doing. I mean, I could spend the next 10 minutes listing off all of the communities that are doing these plans and having these conversations, and I'm really worried that we're going to be left behind. So I guess I'm struggling here because I feel like we've got this strategic plan, and this feels like an area that we continually deprioritize and continually don't invest in. and we've got a climate change problem and we need to act. So I guess I'm not looking for an answer there or commentary. I just wanted to share that I'm frustrated and I'm concerned. And I think this is an area that we can really expand upon in the next year.
No joke, I actually hear crickets. I don't know where they're coming from, but that was kind of funny.
From my screen. Sorry. I have the window open in the house.
The timing of it made me laugh. I'm like, oh, there's actually crickets. Jason, are you ready to keep going?
Yeah, if you want to jump back to the presentation.
Sure.
There's just a couple more slides and then I'll.
All right, so we were way down in the 70s, I believe. Do you remember which one we left off on?
75.
I think we're there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, this is pretty just a big summary of high-level summary of the capital projects for 2021. The details, the worksheets explaining in much more detail what these projects are. But as you can see there, it will be a busy year with projects. Specifically, the Recreation Center, and of course our residential street program are the big players for next year, and Washington Street rehabilitation. So a lot of investment into our infrastructure, even with reduced revenues and outlook, we have funding to keep tackling these significant elements of our community. And then on the next page, we thought that we would be nice and let City Council see the proposed budget for City Council and go ahead and have a discussion. I know, imagine, right? So this is what is in the proposed budget as of now. Just a reminder of kind of the big elements, dues and fees, the organizations that we're participating in, and then the grants and donations. These things are included in that budget. So was there any commentary, I guess, or feedback from council as far as participating in these programs, or kind of status quo as 2020, or any other input would be, I guess, good at this time if you have any.
Councilmember Brown, I saw your hand. Did you have something different, or?
I did, but it was on the last slide. It wasn't on the City Council side.
Do you want to back up real quick?
That's up to you.
There you go.
Jason, on the residential street maintenance, we did have the 2.2 million outlined for that. So we're pulling back $1 million of it and just sticking with 1,250,000. Is that's my understanding. So tell me if that's not correct. And that presents a problem because we don't have enough money.
So for 2020, we added an influx of $2.2 million to really, like I said, ignite the improvements that could be made. And so really tackling that in 2020. So on an ongoing basis, we're bumping the residential street maintenance program from 800,000 to 1.25. So that's actually a pretty significant increase to the annual program that we typically do.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Did we spend the 2.2?
That is happening right now. So they're doing that work right now in 2020. So we will get through that $2.2 million that was added to the residential street program this year. Mm-hmm. And then as an ongoing program, we're increasing from $800,000 to the 1.25 million. And that's what, when we first talked about this several months ago, mm-hmm. That was kind of the plan that we had outlined of how we would do those increases. And this is, so the 1.25 is for the basic residential street maintenance, and that is not inclusive of major projects, as you'll see a few lines down of the 1.2 million on Washington Street.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll pick specific, larger project arterials, somewhere between $700,000 and $1.5 million over the next several years, to really make a dent in the roads, or take dents out of the roads, I guess is probably a better way to say it.
So I know this isn't my ward, but is there funding for the major roads over in Ward 4, like Huron and Melody and things like that? Will we be able to make some of the improvements that those residents need on those roads? Do we have that budgeted somewhere?
Let me pull up kind of the master list over.
And I can ask my questions later. I'm just curious because it looks to me, I was under the impression, besides all my streets that I wanted fixed, that we were going to do some major overhauls on those two big streets that are over in Ward 4. But I don't think we've done the overhauls that I thought we were going to do over there.
So in the 5-year plan, we've got the Washington Street 112th to 120th for 2021, 2022, Huron Street 97th to 104th, then 2023 104th to Washington, and then 2024 Washington Street 104th to 112th. That's the layout through 2024 that we have right now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is just that in terms of the training and registration, I'm pretty sure we did hardly any of that this year because we weren't traveling. And so I'm just wondering if this is this amount or figure based on like everything back to normal next year, or are you kind of taking into account that some things might be still virtual or be canceled, or that was I was just curious about that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So council typically, what was budgeted in 2020 was $4,500 per member for training, the training registration line, which is $40,500. So when we went through and updating budget numbers, we did look at some reductions in places where historically the funds had not been spent. This was one of those line items, but we definitely need to have that conversation with council before we move forward with adopting a budget. If we want to maintain the status quo of $4,500 per member, or do we want to have considerations to reduce that amount since it's often not spent?
Okay, yeah, that's just what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Downing. Oh, gotta unmute first.
Trying to talk with my mute on. Okay. Jason, I may have missed this, but where would we have budgeted the work on 120th between Washington and Steele? Because we got that grant from Dr. Cog, and then I'm sure we have to supplement with some of our own money also. So I'm just kind of curious where that is.
Yeah, so that is in the capital projects fund budget. So that is budgeted for.
I didn't see it, so I just didn't. I don't know if it's next year or the year after. I just didn't know. No.
Let me pull that up. So it is not on that list.
I didn't see it. Yeah.
But it does show up on page 19 of the 101 in the packet.
You don't have to go all the way back there.
Yeah, definitely don't go all the way back, but you do see it. $6.3 million is budgeted on that.
Okay. As long as it's there.
Yes, it definitely is. There's a grant for $6.3 million and then our commitment of about 3.6,
okay.
Of which another 1.8 is going to be supported by the developer at Connell's Farm. So we have about $10 million total on that project that's in there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Jason, do you want to keep going?
Wait,
yeah,
can I ask a question about our budget real quick?
Oh, I didn't see you. Sorry.
I forgive you.
Brown.
Where is the council expenses on this list? You know how we had our expense amount that we could spend individually throughout the year? Where is that on this list?
So that's in that training and registration line item, the $36,175. Okay. That's included there.
Okay. Also, there was something else that I was seeing. Oh, I'm wondering, just for later discussion, whether we want to talk about our grants and donations. If we're cutting some funding, maybe we need to take that back to 2019 numbers, as much as I'd hate to do it. But I think we can shave a little bit off of there. But now I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, let's check out the next slide. So, and we probably do need to go back to discuss the option A, option B scenarios. But as we move forward, October 5th, possible additional conversation about the budget if necessary. And then we had mentioned earlier, a public hearing on the 12th and adoption on the 26th. And we have some flexibility there if necessary. So I think ultimately what we do want to, I guess, come out of this conversation with is discussion around the option A and option B. We've kind of established option B as far as being inclusive of the body worn and dash cams and the digital specialist to help support that. And just wanted to touch base on the feeling of using fund balance in that option B in 2021 to support those elements and compensation for staff.
Okay.
One last slide for you, Mayor and Council. If you go back, Mayor, in terms of, down one, please. So right now I'm planning for a spring strategic planning work session where we would hire a facilitator to come in and do an update to the strategic plan. So included within your packet at a high level is an update on where we're at with the different strategic initiatives. And Rupa put together a really nice summary table, which you've seen. And I had also included this attached to my performance evaluation self-assessment documentation. We're in this weird space with COVID-19. So I think part of what I'd like to hear from council after we talk about options A and B in terms of where you want to head. If there's other things that council either wants to put on a wish list or wants to table until we can regroup and have a robust strategic planning process, that will inform what the budget process looks like for 2022. So we do have Rupa scheduled, as well as other directors, to provide you with an update on CARES Act funding on October 5th. So we're heading into the fall, and we've got the December 4th deadline in terms of spending CARES Act funding. So we're going to do a check-in with you and report out on what's been spent to date and additional ideas that have been generated, and certainly have a discussion with you about what else we can do by the end of the year. And certainly no information in terms of any movement at the federal level about extending that deadline of the end of the year for localities, even though we've signed on to efforts to try to push that date out so we have more time to utilize funding. So more to come on that. So I think this would be a good time to go back to option A and option B. And
I ask a question though. Yes, we will go back to option A and option B, but I wrote down two things that came to mind when you were talking about projects. We've had two presentations, I guess maybe in the last year, that if you could remind me where we landed with them, because I felt like it was a big presentation. There was a map, a diagram, and then it just didn't go anywhere. So the two things were the Justice Center Park and the 112th and York project. Like, we had people present to us this huge vision for what to do with that property. Where did both of those things end up?
Sure. Brooke, do you want to take 112th and York first, and then we'll jump over to Amanda to talk about the park?
Okay.
Sure. So we actually had a resubmittal for the 112th project. When they originally came to us, they were talking about half multifamily, half owner occupied. They are now have had to revisit it, and there is a new, the ownership group has changed. It's still the same owners, but not necessarily the same group of owners. They've not transacted or sold the land, but they are looking at now all multifamily. And right now, that is the only way that they are thinking the numbers can work. Part of their challenge is the drainage on their site is going to require extensive infrastructure costs that aren't typically associated with that. So they've been in limbo for a better part of 9 or 10 months.
Okay. Hi, Amanda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we are definitely still moving forward with Justice Center West Park from a design standpoint. It's just all been behind the scenes work. You do not see an ask for construction dollars in 2021, in part based on COVID. But we had also had that conversation sort of, I think it was late last year, early this year, as we were headed into budget, that funding was not available on the capital side for construction. We had already received grant funding, and so made a determination to move forward with the completion of the design process. By having that design fully complete, we should be in a better position to strategize about grant funding for the construction phase of that project. So at some point here in the future, we will bring forward to you a request for either grant support or construction funding, or a combination of the two, which is most likely. It just likely won't be in the 2021 budget process. It'll probably be closer to 2022. We are targeting the fall 2021 Adams County Open Space Grant Cycle as a possibility to request funding. We are kind of on a side note, but related, we are extremely excited. Our new Parks Project Manager did start last week. So that position has been vacant for nearly 10 months now. So she'll be picking that project off where I've kept it moving along in that vacancy, but I'm really excited to have her on board to run with that and finalize the design. You won't really see any major changes. What we brought to you last year in the concept phase was approved. So nothing has changed significantly during the design process. It's all the construction documents and the detail that goes along with turning the vision that was a part of the concept design into something we can actually build.
Do we have any other parks opportunities? Because I mean, you say it was approved. I guess okay. Is there any other?
It was a long process. So we did the public engagement process, presented several concepts, and then we had come back to council with a final concept design to move forward into the construction design process.
Okay.
I guess that's where we've been for 2020.
And this could totally be me. I guess I figured when we didn't have the funding to move forward that we hadn't formally approved the most recent design. So if that's the case, I guess there's no more talking about it.
It is nearly wrapped up. Most of that we did end up with 2 grants to fund that design process. So we received a grant from DOLA as well as a grant from Adams County Open Space. So the city contribution to that design was about $40,000.
Okay. Brooke, you raised your hand again.
Yeah, I just also wanted to mention, I forgot to also mention that as part of the RTD project, RRP installed an asphalt sidewalk that goes along the track there connecting to 112. It's in poor condition already because of the time that's transpired since it was installed 4.5 years ago. So actually Kent and company have been able to reallocate funding, and we are going to replace that with concrete and have a more appropriate pavement wave over there at 112th in New York as well. So I didn't want to forget to mention that because I think it's somewhat important. Also to your question earlier is that we are looking to improve and enhance what's there from the developer.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I have a question on A and B. A and B both mention freezing pay. I believe, I'm probably paraphrasing it wrong. I would like to know what the dollar amount savings that would be by freezing pay.
I don't know that one actually has salary adjustment, so I'm going to pull the screen up again for you.
Thank you.
Because option B has pay, not frozen.
And then when we're listening to the presentation, we were told that everything from A was in B along with the extra stuff. So
Right.
It actually is a salary increase in B.
That's
Correct. So option A, Councilmember Brown, is a balanced budget. And so what that means is pay freeze and evaluate mid-year means that in option A, salary increases are not included in option A. So option B includes adding salary adjustments, which consists of 2 pieces, the merit increase and then the market increase. So that totals about $423, I think I calculated. So option A does not include pay increases, but includes the recommendation to evaluate in mid-year of next year, which many organizations are doing across the metro area. There are many organizations that are moving forward with merit increases, on average, a ballpark of about 3%. Certainly, police department increases, step increases are always higher based on a step plan.
Okay. I just, I'm very hesitant to have our employees suffer any more than they already are. Okay. Thank you.
The reason we, just to add a little bit more, the reason we broke it out this way is because, there's lots of conversations being had by many organizations, and we can move forward with option B. It's just council needs to support using general fund reserve balance in this manner for all of the items outlined in option B.
So option A balances because it balances against the money that we have available coming in.
Revenues and expenditures, correct.
Okay, and option B actually has us pulling from the general fund, right? Yes.
Yes, correct.
General fund reserves of $681K.
While maintaining a 70+% general fund reserve.
So we would, that was one of my next questions. So we would still maintain the 70% provided that nothing happens in the COVID front over the next couple months or year or however long this is going to last. Okay. Normally we do the merit increases, right? And then we do the market adjustments. And you had mentioned market adjustments just a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. Boy, I'm torn. I'm honestly torn whether, we could do one and not the other. We would obviously have to do the merit increases and then hold off on market increases until July if we put that into option B. It's just a suggestion. I know we're trying to find money left and right. Just a suggestion.
That was a question I had, Heather. Like, are you entertaining an option B where we take things off, like an option A and a half or whatever, 8.2?
Of course. I mean, these options are for council to react to, and what is your comfort level? You know, I don't want employees to suffer either. However, you know, we've been able to hold the ship steady, so to speak, keep positions filled, and recover from having frozen positions. You know, the Parks Project Manager is an example of that. We're able to just go ahead and refill that. As long as we stay on track and see an upward trajectory with our revenues, you know, we'll be in a good position. It's really what is council's comfort level in terms of we can use general fund reserve monies to do all of B or some hybrid thereof. You know, if there is a reluctance by council on the salary adjustment side, what I would recommend strongly is we reevaluate it in July. So by second quarter, Jason and I will bring information to you in terms of how, and you'll see this through the monthly financial reports as well, how revenues are trending.
Can I ask a question, Heather? So in option B, the digital specialist and the body cam, dash cam, those are not single year expenditures. Those are going to be ongoing. But this particular year, we want to use reserves for it. So what's the plan after that?
The plan is that hopefully we'll have upward trajectory with revenues. Otherwise, what I'll have to do, and hypothetically, if council, you said, Heather, we don't want to use reserves, what that tells me is I have to go back and I have to identify reductions. And that'll translate to reductions in level of service. So because we have such a high general fund reserve balance, I'm comfortable putting forth this option to council. If we weren't in this situation, I wouldn't have done this. But I mean, and that goes back to Jason had showed the slides earlier where he did the out year 10-year projections. And so there is a long-term impact, and that's where every year we have to really prioritize and make sure we're allocating funding appropriately based on what we need for the upcoming year. And, you know, our budget is lean. I can tell you that. And the level of service that we provide is significant for the budget we have. But it requires every year looking closely at, you know, what we've spent the prior year, even sometimes going back a couple of years to make sure, you know, we're budgeting appropriately and forecasting as well on the revenue side.
Mayor, can I ask just one more question?
Yeah.
Thank you. When NERA took out the $11 million loan, right? And it basically wiped NERA out. Say something came up that NERA wanted to do this year, and we made that agreement with the city that we could come to the city and get money, okay? So say we have a major project, I have no idea what it could be. Mm-hmm. Is there anything in the budget, or does there need to be anything in the budget to support NERA?
No, not currently. And I think it's important. NERA's investment in bonding, $11.5 million, is significant. Mm-hmm. It did not completely wipe out NERA's budget. So I want to be careful in using that terminology because NERA does have funding available and the city does have an IGA with them. So if NERA comes up with a project, and I believe council made this commitment through that IGA, then NERA would approach the city council and ask for support. So, you know, there's not a project currently that I'm aware of that NERA is going to be making an ask of council, but if that does come forward, I think we would be in a position to use one-time reserve monies to help fund any ask of NERA.
That is exactly what I wanted to hear. So we would still fund NERA if there was a big project, but we would take it out of general reserve.
Yes, we don't have any type of placeholder in the capital projects or the general fund for what if NERA has a project. It would be based on an ask, and we, again, we have a good reserve balance that council would have that flexibility. Today, you have that flexibility. So as long as you continue to be prudent moving forward, then you'll have that flexibility.
Okay.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor Leidy. And I also wanted to thank you because you brought up the Justice Center West Park, because that was one of the things I was going to ask about. I don't think I was on council when it came up the last time. And I just would really hope that whatever this final design is, it includes some parking spaces, because otherwise I don't really see that it's going to get used very much. That's just my 2 cents on that. The question I really had is on this option B here, under the salary adjustments, because we're talking, the terminology there is non-sworn and sworn. Is this just the police department salary?
No, great question, Councilmember Goff. So the 3% non-sworn merit increase, civilians. So sworn are officers. So the 73 FT that we were talking about earlier, well, there's 10 less of that number, but sworn officers receive they're part of a step plan. So that's the third bullet, the sworn step plan increases. And then non-sworn, our civilian staff receive a 3% increase. And that 3% was increased in the 2020 budget over what used to be a 2% increase. So we took a step forward to make civilian staff more competitive. And then we underwent an overall market update project that was captured in the 2020 budget. And so we undertook that same market analysis, and that reflects the $89,000. So generally speaking, the market shifted about 2%. And so that's not all positions. Some positions remain within their appropriate ranges. But with the pay plans that'll come forward as part of the budget process as a separate resolution, you'll see that min and maxes of pay ranges shift a little bit. And so that's that 2%, that second bullet there.
Okay, thank you. And so the market increase, just to clarify, is, or maybe there wasn't a way to do this, but does that take into account like our current financial situation, recession, or whatever we're going to call it? Or, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if that's like reflecting the current situation that we have going, or the near future one.
Well, that's a great question. What I would say is it reflects Denver Boulder market salary data. And so for some organizations, there's going to be lag time in terms of how they report their data. But I would say we've seen a stronger market response in the past. And so I think with the 2%, you're starting to see a little bit of a slowing within the market. And, we could see more in the next market update that we do. But, it's been pretty strong over the last 5 years, really, and above 3%. But then, the market, I can say it's moved 2%, but if we weren't in the financial position to move us 2%, I'd be presenting a different option.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments for Jason or Heather, or are you feeling that we need to continue this discussion in October, or do we need that follow-up, or are we good with what I guess we need to pick option A or option B, huh?
Yeah, when you pick an option, we will then present you with a really thick binder with line item detail.
That we're going to go page by page through starting now. I think I'm okay with option B because we do have the money and those are items that we need. I go back and forth on the salary piece, not because I don't believe that our staff deserves them, but because I wonder if there's a responsibility to the current state of things that we should be a little more frugal, even though we have money in the bank. And I just worry about the ongoing expense of the annual lease for the body cameras and dash cameras and the digital specialist. And so that's the only reason I'm more nervous about option B. I know we can afford it now. It's just the ongoing piece and what that's going to look like. So I don't know. Does anyone else have ideas to share? Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, I like option B, and I have the same hesitation about some of the reserve funds. But I like it in the totality in terms of everything that A has, plus, what we're asking our police to do with the Senate bill and the body camera and stuff. And I don't even think this is an option, but it could be, but I don't even favor it, to be honest with you. But the issue is, if this isn't mandated till 2023, and we want this to happen, we believe in this to happen, it's good for the community, it's good policing, and it's good for transparency. But we could save a tremendous amount of money by postponing the body cams until at least 1 year. And that's something, again, I'm not even sure the chief wants that. He's excited to get going on this. The police are excited to get going on this. It's the right thing to do in so many ways. But it seems like we are dipping into a lot of reserve money for something that's a priority, but not a mandate, unfunded mandate until 2023. And if that's an issue, I don't think I don't know if it's worth considering postponing that for a year. But that being said, I'm okay with option B as it's written.
Councilmember Downing? I saw you unmuting. I knew you were getting ready.
All right. I think I'm comfortable with option B. I am very concerned about using the reserves down because they go down fast. We spend, money goes fast, and it took a long time to build these reserves. So, but I believe that the way the budget is presented right now, and there's things in there that we really have to accommodate, no matter where we get the money from. So I'm okay at this. I was kind of teetering, but I'm okay with B, the way we've got it presented.
Councilmember Escobar.
Mr. Conservatives are going to vote for option B.
What? No strings attached, just straight up option B. Nice, thank you. Councilmember Witkovich.
Keep in mind that it's a budget. It doesn't mean that you spend everything that's in the budget. It's like your checkbook. You put the money in there, but you don't have to write all the checks just because you got checks.
Ashley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to throw my support for option B. I think we've got to do the body cameras. I appreciate Councilmember Peterson's idea about putting it off, but I think this is what our community wants. And I think, this is what we need to do now. So I would definitely support option B, I guess with the same hesitations about the salary adjustments.
Councilmember Malika, you're unmuted.
Well, I'm double muted because I'm on my phone. The audio wasn't working, so I look like I'm on mute. I'm trying to be sneaky. Anyway, I'm actually right along with Ashley. I think I support option B. I am a little shaky on the salary adjustments, but definitely think we should go forward with the body cameras and the dash cameras. I really support that.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I first am very surprised to hear my ward partner say that he's all in for option B. I feel like that's never happened. So I'm going to write it on the calendar. But I am also in favor of option B. We can't wait on the body cams. I think it's what our community wants, and we should move forward. And I too am. I'm kind of back and forth on the staff salary piece. I almost wonder if waiting until July is a better option, especially since we haven't had to furlough any staff. We haven't had to lay off any staff. Nobody's getting a smaller paycheck or fewer benefits because of the direction that we're moving. So I would prefer to wait until July. And then Heather, where is the paid family leave conversation that we were supposed to be having?
October 5th.
Cool.
So
Okay.
that's coming forward. And the one thing I will say in doing, in conversation with HR staff that's going to present that, there's not a lump sum amount for paid family leave because it's all going to be based on utilization. So if council decides to move forward with implementing that policy, I think it's really something that we use as a pilot program to track what does utilization look like, and are there costs that we need to cover in terms of temporary staff that we need to bring in and that sort of thing. So we'll have that discussion on October 5th.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Brown?
I am actually, I'm for Plan B. I don't think we should wait on the police cameras, although I understand exactly what Randall's saying. I just don't think that it's prudent for us right now. We have the money. Let's just get going on it, give them the head start that they want as far as training and leading the way. So I'm all for that. You know that I'm hesitant about the salary increases. I did have a question. Now, the merit increases come with evaluations. Is that correct, Heather?
They do, yes. So like currently through the end of 2020, staff are receiving if they get a successful performance review, they receive a merit increase. And it's currently 3% for civilian and then the appropriate percentage for a PD step.
So do you know, and I know this is kind of a random question, are we top heavy at the beginning of the year? And if we wait till July till July to talk about it, is it then a moot point,
Jason, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so we're not top heavy. It's spread pretty consistently through the year. I did actually look at that and ran the numbers that way, just to see what that would look like. And it actually, to your point, it does not make a difference if we squeezed everything in at a later point. It would make a small difference on the front end. Obviously, people would be delayed, so somebody might not get something in February and wait till July. But overall, to Mayor Leidy's point, it's the ongoing piece that's the bigger piece to look at, and that's kind of why we showed like the 10-year forecast in a couple of those slides to see what not only would the 2021 impact be, but as we move forward. And that, again, as we talk about revenue forecasts and things like that, highly dependent on a lot of other things besides what we control. So that makes it, pretty challenging.
My only concern about waiting until July is that some employees would get their merit increase. And then if we have to come back in July and say, you know what, we can't do any more for the rest of the year, we're going to have half our employees, if we're not top heavy or bottom weighted, we're going to have half of our employees who say won't get an increase because in July, maybe things haven't gone perfect and we can't give merit increases from July, forward after that conversation. So I do have some concern about waiting until July, but I am willing to do whatever the rest of council wants to do.
So if I can clarify, Councilmember Brown, it wouldn't be half and half. So when we say, we would reevaluate in July, we'd bring that information, revenue information. We would bring revenue information to you to justify the expense, the $423,000 in expense or, partial year, but everyone will receive an adjustment if they receive a successful performance review. So it wouldn't be that half employees get this or half that. And unfortunately, some organizations were in that situation this year. But that's why I kept the ship steady and said, we're going to continue to do what we can do. So really, if you think about reevaluation in July, would be we hold off on doing anything for anyone until July. And then we look at doing something. And I feel very strongly, I don't want to split between civilian and sworn. It gets messy. And, really what we're looking at is what's the right thing to do. So the impact to employees would be the first half of the year. They wouldn't get, what's on the annual schedule to get, but we also are in a very good position where we have not had to do furloughs. We have not had to do cuts. And we're fortunate to be there.
So if we were to push it off and reevaluate it in July, would we retro all those people and then just end up spending the money anyhow? Or what is your suggestion for that?
We could retro back to January 1st. It would all depend on, what the revenues show at the time. So what you see in front of you is an annual amount, that 400, the 234, 89, and 100 total 423. And that's an annual amount for that. Correct, Jason? Make sure I got that right. Yep. And so, if revenues are strong, and I hope they are, that they're coming back, then we can always retro it back to January 1st.
And maybe I'm just worried because I haven't asked Julie my COVID questions lately. I'm just worried that we are going to go into a second wave and it could affect our economy even more than we think now. With that said, and understanding it correctly now, I really would prefer to wait until July and then, have a conversation whether we can move forward with increases or if we can retro it or what we can do at that point. Thank you for the better understanding of it. I appreciate it. But I am for Plan B.
Got it. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also in support of Plan B. I would tend to go towards including the salary increases because I think we don't want to lose staff. And if there's a whole lot of new, rules and regulations and learning about the body cameras and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, that's a lot to be asking, and I just would be kind of concerned because we've had problems in recent years with staff retention that this might just be one more reason for people to go elsewhere. But it's not something it's not a hill I would die on. So I will go with what the majority is and call it a consensus. If people want to wait till July, I would be all right with that.
Jason.
So one element that I'll tie back from the beginning of the presentation was the fact that we're super conservative in not including one-time revenues from Carl's Farm. And so whether those end up happening in 2020 or 2021, that's in line with, I'll throw out a number that I think is pretty accurate, but we don't have final information from them, to the tune of $1 million to $1.5 million additional revenue in the general fund that has not been included in any projections to be added to fund balance in 2020 or in 2021. Again, being conservative that they haven't come to the table and provided us a check. We're just excluding that at this point. But that's another consideration to keep in mind as we're kind of debating start the year with increases in mind or pause until July. We're confident that is going to happen. We're just keeping that out of the budget at this point.
So it's a timing thing. I mean, if they pull permits here in the fall, which we expect them to do, and Brooke's done the analysis, then we're going to end the year with a higher fund balance, right? We'll capture that revenue. And so if all things stay on track into next year, we'll be in a stronger position revenue wise. And that'll get tied into council. What I hear council saying is move forward with plan B, reservations about salary adjustments, hold off until July 1st. It's really close in terms of the notes I have on who's for and who would like to hold off. I would say I think there's maybe more on hold off and reevaluate in July.
I think we should maybe get a pulse on that, because I'm not sure. I think I didn't hear a clear-cut answer on that. I'm okay with option B as is. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we need to find a way a year from now to roll these expenses into our actual operating budget and not be taking this $800,000 hit year after year after year.
Right.
That was all I was saying. So I'm for option B as it stands. Councilmember Peterson?
As am I. And I agree with what Catherine said. Morale is very important throughout our city. And as we talked about privately in executive session here as a council a week or so back, our staff at every level has dealt with very much the unthinkable. And, you know, if we have this money, we're looking at this, it's just simply the right thing to do in terms of the customer service, the excellence that we demand of our staff, the work that they've done that has been amplified since February. Sorry, my voice, the last couple of days, it's very odd, hoarse. I don't know if it's the air or what, but anyway, I agree. I favor it as it stands, and I think, you know, taking a look at the people that make our city great, for our residents that make our city great, is morally the right thing to do, and the expenditures in this case don't break the bank, and so I favor B as is for those reasons.
Great. So I saw a thumbs up from Antonio. I didn't know if he wanted to speak. I think he agreed with the option B as it is. Councilmember Brown, did you want to? Oh, Joyce is with us on that. Councilmember Brown?
I am with us on that, but I just had one more question.
Okay.
And I think this is for Heather. Heather, I know that when we looked at the Civic Center master plan, we realized that we were going to be able to put in retail, basically, right? The retail, if there was some in there, it was going to be very limited. When we met with the Carl's Dairy people and their redevelopment plan, they had a portion that was for retail also, which we thought would help our sales tax and things like that. Do you know if they've eliminated the retail portion, or they're just going for homes now?
Of Carl's Farm? No. There's it's designed to be retail, mixed use commercial on the frontage of 120th. It's just that the residential's going in first because that sits farther back on the property, given that the property is deep. And then on the Civic Campus site, that's intended to be mixed use as well, but the specifics of it just haven't been figured out yet. So the master plan contemplates a certain level of retail, a certain level of commercial, and then residential. But those will be discussions moving forward in partnership with Kinsey.
Okay. With that being said, and giving full faith to my wonderful city manager, I would take option B and no hold back on the salary increase or decrease or a freeze or whatever. I'm trusting Heather on this one, and she's trusting Jason. So I'm there for you.
Okay. Maybe, I guess, see if we're looking at account, who wants to not be option B in its full form. Councilmember Mullica.
Yeah, I would still want to wait on the salary adjustment. That's my vote.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know I hear that we have some potential money coming in with Carl's Dairy Farm. I just don't want to spend our money before we have it. And I guess I'm just really anxious about giving increases when we don't know what the future is going to hold for our city. So I am still in favor and waiting until July.
Okay, so I heard two. So, Councilmember Goff.
This is just a question. I'm wondering, Heather, if you had done any research, or if it's possible to find out how other municipalities are handling, like salary increases for their next year.
Yes, this is my super technical cheat sheet of this information was going around the city manager's listserv through CML last week. Like I mentioned earlier, it varies by municipality and the overall financial position they're in. So for example, I'll just give you some examples. Several communities are assessing mid-year, such as Lone Tree, Arvada. Lakewood is doing PD steps, but not civilian increases. Parker is doing 3% merit with steps and PD steps, excuse me. Glendale is doing 3% merit, 5% PD steps. Wheat Ridge is doing merit, and their merit goes from 0 to 5%, meaning if you get 0, that means an unsuccessful performance review. Greenwood Village is not budgeting anything. I can't remember where Westminster landed or Thornton, and I know they were in progress of figuring that out, but they didn't contribute. So it just really depends on the organization. So there's not really a rule of thumb that based on X number of organizations, we should or shouldn't. It varies across the board.
Okay, well, at my count, it was 7-2, and that seemed to be the majority for option B as it stands. So we're ready to wrap it up?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
thank you.
Well, thank you for an awesome study session. Lots of information, lots of great questions. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.